Hello, and welcome to The Executive Appeal, a show that convenes the world's most powerful and successful leaders to share mentoring and career advancement advice to help you successfully transition into senior level executive positions. I'm your host, Alex Tremble, award-winning speaker, author, and leadership expert with over a decade of experience coaching and advising some of our nation's most senior level government leaders. So if you're ready to reach your goals, let's get started. Hey, welcome, you ambitious, wonderful, awesome individuals to another power-packed episode of the Executive Appeal Podcast. I am your host, Alex Tremble, and I am thrilled to have you join us here today. This is the podcast where we go beyond the ordinary, moving past the cliches of just work hard to actually uncover the true secrets it takes and requires to be successful at the executive level positions. And look, you've been on this show for a long time. You know what's going on. I'm not just your very handsome, very funny, very clever host. I'm also an international prolific speaker and executive coach. So if you're seeking an engaging speaker for your next event, then look no further. I've had the privilege of addressing audiences around the world, sharing insights that go beyond the surface and leaving long-lasting impacts. So whether it's developing meaningful relationships with your teams, mentors, clients, fellow executives, or if it's focusing on providing your audience with the strategies required to achieve exceptional results in the face of life's complex challenges, I've got you covered. Don't miss an opportunity to elevate your team and stakeholders' potential. Visit alextremble.com today and book me to give your next speech, and let's make your next event unforgettable together. Now, with no further ado, can I say today is a good day? See, today we have the always amazing, always impeccably dressed, and if you're watching this, you can see it, Mr. Kenneth A. Goodwin Jr. So we're going to have a great conversation today. See, Ken has over 20 years of Wall Street capital market experience and serves as the managing partner of Jeanensis Ventures, a private investment capital and digital asset advisory firm. Ken is also the general partner and chief investment officer for the 144 Trailblazer Digital Impact Fund that's targeting cash flows positive growth to Series A digital transformation and emerging technology firms in artificial intelligence, blockchain application, ed tech, fintech, med tech. I mean, if there's any other tech out there, he's doing it. He serves as I'm gonna wrap this up in a second, but look, he really has done so much that I could talk forever about this, but we have to get to the conversation. But he also serves on several public and private advisory boards, is a TEDx speaker, is a 10 to no global game changer, the U.S. White House Business Council Trans-Pacific Partnership Agreement member, an Aspen Institute fellow. The guy, I honestly, I believe he's going to jump off with me and just jump on the phone with President Obama. How are you doing today, kind sir?
You know, I'm doing wonderful. I'm doing great. I might have to have you as our public investor relations for the 144 Trailblazer Fund, man. You hit a home run with Jeanensis and everything else. I'm blessed, highly favored, and it's an honor and a privilege, Alex, to be on your podcast, to have fun today and to share knowledge with your audience.
Hey, look, don't put that stuff out there because you can very easily hire me. What's going on? we were talking about some stuff right before we got started, and I can't even remember what we were talking about because it was something funny. I was like, no, let's hold that idea. But you made the point about just how like people don't see the real you. And actually, I'm gonna stop. Do you remember what you said? I love what you shared.
We were having a great time just before going online, just really talking about our lives, our families, what we were doing, sports, everything else, and just laughing away. And what happens in the social media world, everyone gets caught up with the accolades, what they're doing and everything else. And I take a stoic approach. I've actually spent a little less time in social media because, as you know, Alex, I've been on TV, on FinTech TV, as a digital asset contributor on the floor of the New York Stock Exchange. So you see everybody, every CEO, every big trader coming in. So you're accustomed to that. You're accustomed to seeing folks walking in. But one thing I've learned is how do you mitigate the noise and find it within yourself, the peace within yourself to find who you are. And your true self and being true to yourself is more important. So most people don't see that. They don't see us laughing and joking away and talking about things of that nature. And that's really who you are. At the end of the day, that needs to resonate more than what you find in the social media, where it's the whole idea of trying to be perfect and everything else. So just be yourself, man. I mean, be who you are. You know, that's really how people want to meet you. They don't want to meet you and say, you know, I give you an example. I know we're rambling a little bit off, but last night I was at 3 events and a gentleman asked me, he said, you know, what do you do? And then I paused and I said, you know what? I'm a dad, man.
Yeah.
That's it. I mean, I'm a dad. And he saw my reaction and that was it. And he said, you know, I'm a dad too. And we just started talking about our kids. And then the whole night, I you know, what was unique about that conversation, it would have started off with 2 minutes and it ended at 10 minutes.
Yeah.
Because we felt so comfortable about talking about who we are. And then we started talking about business and finding ways to work together. So I think just being your authentic self is so real, so true. And people want to meet you that way.
You know, again, I couldn't agree with you more. I was at an event. I was actually speaking at an event this past week actually, and there is a person who was a very, very senior level official within the current federal government, and they were at this table, and I was watching him, and there were people talking to him, and I could see in his face he was just bored. They were bringing up all these technical topics and I'm watching his face and I'm like, this guy is not interested in this conversation. And so, you know, there was a break and I was like, hey, so what do you plan on doing this summer, man? And he just started talking and I was like, well, I asked him some questions about his family. Oh, cool. And then I said, hey, do you hike? And his eyes lit up. He said, oh yeah, I've hiked here. I haven't been here. Like I said, a 15, 20-minute conversation about hiking, the places we've been, and so on and so forth. And he was so engaged. And then what happened? Someone else saw that and they tried to jump in. They made it back serious. And I saw his face go like, oh, this again. And so sometimes there are so many times that you think you want to build a connection with someone, especially someone influential. You think you gotta have this super technical conversation with them. And maybe sometimes that works, but many times, hey, how's your family doing? What's going on? Those things really matter and build those connections. I think much easier, actually.
Oh, not only is it much easier, it nurtures relationships.
Mm-hmm.
That is the key, nurturing relationships, the ability to identify what's important in other people. Not just the professional. The professional is there. I mean, there's a reason why you're in that room. You're in that room because of your professional accolades, right? They will not put you in those rooms unless you don't meet those criteria. So you're there because you check off the boxes. Now, the next step is once you're in that room, how are you able to create a lasting relationship? Not just for that moment, because the moment could be just for the moment. You get the business card, or you do now in these day and age, you do the Lincoln transfer, and no one follows up afterwards. But if you can leave that impression where they remember you and they say, hey, let's go out for a cup of coffee or lunch or for a dinner, or I want to invite you to the event, then now you're building on something.
I want to ask the audience, everyone listening right now, and I want you to literally answer this question. So you can put it in the chat box. You make a comment if you're watching this on YouTube, wherever. I want you to literally answer this question right now. What is the purpose of an initial interaction? What is the purpose of an initial interaction? I'm gonna give you just 1, 2, 3 seconds to write that down. The answer: to have a second interaction. There is no way you can learn everything about one person, whether it's 30 minutes, 6 hours. You can't learn everything. And so, as we're talking about right now, Ken, I think what I'm hearing is those interactions are, you want to do something that makes them want to talk to you again, that makes them want to pick up the phone when you call them. Like when they see your name, do they smile like, oh shoot, this Alex?
Or do they run away from you?
Or do they run away from you? Like, oh my
I
God,
don't
that
deal with
person
you
again.
ever. Well, if I could share this, Alex, here's how, I lived in Japan back and forth for about 30 plus years. So my first time in Japan was as an exchange student. I was the first exchange student to go to Japan at Jeanensis Smith University. So about 30 plus years ago, I had the privilege of being an exchange student. Then I went back a couple of times for graduate internship at Ito Yakanto, and then of course under the Mike Mansfield Fellow Program. And during that time, my homestay mother, she was a tea sensei. And she's like, I got to teach you the art of making tea. And I'm looking at her like, what are you talking about? She said, because that's how you improve your business. You're going to meet with all these C-level executives here in Japan, all these CEOs and diplomats, and maybe the ambassador and prime minister. And you got to understand the relationship with people, know people. Yeah. I'm like looking at her and she's like, well, I want you to go out and get the fruits and the vegetables and the fine tea and to create the environment that you're in. And when you create that environment, when you do the art of tea making, you are serving tea, and the goal is to get that person to open up, so they can share their lives, they can share their story, and your job is just really there to make them feel comfortable and to make them to want to come back again. And then believe me, she's got a lot of recurring businesses because of that demeanor. So that's one thing I would share with your audience. Is creating the environment, the energy. You want to be around good energy people, that make you feel great, and you can do anything. And so that's my biggest takeaway with the tea making ceremony.
I mean, I want to underscore that, and I'm going to make sure we circle back around that at some point, at some other time. That whole, your job is to create the environment. There was this. I used to work for this woman. She was the Deputy Assistant Secretary for U.S. Department of the Interior. Her name was Pam M. I won't put everything out there. And she used to sit down. We had these mentoring lunches every once in a while. She told me one thing. I loved it. I didn't really understand it, but I loved it. And now I understand why. She said, the person with the most information wins. And I was like, oh, the person with the most information wins. And so ultimately what ended up happening was like, I then understood that it was about listening, right? Like if I'm always talking, then I'm not bringing in information, right? I'm putting them out, but I'm not bringing it in. So it's about listening, yes. And on top of that, like you said, it's about creating that environment, because you can be there and want to listen to someone, want to hear and understand the story. But if there's something about you that someone just doesn't trust, or they don't feel open up, they're not going to share everything. So how do you behave in a way that people say, oh, I can share this with Ken, I can share this with Alex. He's not going to say, he's not going to judge me. He's not going to, go tell somebody else. And I think it's about, how you interact in that moment. But I think, like you said, it's all that how do you lean in? What is that space? Oh, are we always meeting in the office, or let's go out for lunch, let's go out for drinks? Like, creating that environment is so important. I want to underscore that point.
Well, you can transfer that over into all industries. I mean, life. You go from government to the venture capital space, the private equity space. Those spaces are even more critical in that. The ability to listen to your founders, right? I mean, it's one of the things that I love to do is sit back and hear their journey. Tell me about your journey. It doesn't have to be about your numbers. Oftentimes what happens is that people get caught up in the actual numbers. What's the return on investments? What does it look like in terms of your operating cash flows? And those are important, right? To know the net working capital, operating working capital. At Jeanensis and at the 144 Trailblazer Fund, we spend more time looking at the statement of cash flows because it talks about the journey. It allows for the founders to tell their story. And the storytelling is so critical. It's probably the most important thing to do in your career. Not only just be a subject matter expert and know what you're talking about, but also your ability to include your personal journeys. How did you get there?
Yeah.
What inspired you to get there? And that carries a lot more value than the actual subject matter itself. And you'd be amazed. People will spend more time in that. But the listening is very critical, because your ability to listen allows for you to hear about the journey. What is it this person is doing? Why? What's your big why? Why you create this company? What motivated you? And to me, that actually, being a dad helps, because you learn a lot as a dad. As the child grows up, there's no instructions how to be a dad, right? it's like everyone wants to tell you how, but they don't know themselves.
Yeah, absolutely.
So you really have to. I'm learning as my son grows older just to pay more attention to him. It's interesting, right?
So you brought up two different people. I want to think about two groups of people. One, you talked about the founders. I have a thought to say about founders, and I'm going to pause and let you say something if you have a reaction. Then I want to talk about, you talked about your son. So first, founders. I was thinking about this morning. I think it was this morning I was thinking about this, and I was like, unfortunately, most people are not willing to invest in themselves. And some people are going to get upset with me. This is the reality. I know this for the fact is that most people are not willing to invest in themselves. They want someone else to invest in it. They may have goals. They may have, places they want to be, but they want someone else to invest. The company should invest in me, or they should just give me a scholarship. Or it's so much wanting someone else to invest in you to achieve your own personal goals. And I thought about founders, and I was like, the crazy thing about founders is, generally speaking, I think the vast majority of founders are creating something from nothing, which means that they are not getting paid necessarily to do it. They are investing in themselves to make something happen for themselves. And I think in order to be truly successful, yes, it's wonderful when you have someone else or a company behind you to invest in you. But if you want something, you have to be willing to put your own dollars at stake to say, you know what? This conference is important. I need to be there. This coaching is important. I need to be there. This book is important. I need to get. And you know what? I'm willing to take money out of my own pocket and put it towards it because this is important to me. What do you have any reactions to that thought process I was going through this morning?
It's, you and I are on the same wavelength. That was actually my thought this morning. And what inspired me in that thought was a couple of things. One, in my meditation, I do early morning meditation. It brought up, and I pray and I meditate. But I also was thinking about Miles Monroe. And Miles Monroe, who's one of the great speakers, motivational speakers. In fact, I believe he was the mentor to Les Brown.
Yeah.
And so Miles, he's considered to be like the godfather of all. And he emphasized time. When you look at in terms of people, they think it's always financial, but it's actually time. You can't get time back. Yep. Time is the most precious thing. So you can't go backwards. You can only go forward. And you can't get that time that you use. So investing in yourself is putting in the time. And then the other thing that's really key that I see is taking the time and initiative to know that you are creators, meaning that we are energy. Every part of us is energy in movement. Yeah. So being creative means that we all sent here for a purpose. You have to identify your purpose, but be able to shift and bend the energy. And I say that wholeheartedly because most people don't think about this, right? They don't think about the scientific or mathematical equations behind this, but everything we do requires a level of energy. And if you're shifting and bending, then you're creating. And then finding the value in that. So what I tell a lot of the founders is that what is your purpose in creating your business? Is it to go out and ask investors for capital? No, you create this because you want to have an impact. And now you have to ask yourself, how can I make financial energy, money from this creation?
Yeah.
And if you are able to create or make financial energy from your creation, now you are relying on yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And the capital for the investors is just an option.
Yeah.
So your first step should be, I'm in this because I love to do this. This is where I'm putting my time.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm using my time to create this energy that would eventually create value.
Yeah.
And I'm adding my personal journey to this. And so this is your legacy. And I say these words because these words are really, really, really critical in life in general. And it's something that I had to learn. I had to sit back and learn myself, okay, this is why I do what I do. Mm-hmm. This is the reason why I'm here. I'm in this room for a particular reason, because you and I know we've been in many different rooms in government, on Wall Street. You sit in all these rooms and you have to ask yourself, I'll share this with your audience. I grew up in the projects. I got a kid from Hoboken who grew up in the projects during the days of crack cocaine, where, substance abuse was high, and, 60% of the people are dead. So how does this kid gets the chance to be on the floor of the Tokyo Stock Exchange, the first ever African-American to monitor trades on the floor of a major exchange and meet prime ministers? You have to ask yourself, what is it that allows for this individual to be in this room? And it's bigger than you, right? Yeah. It's always bigger than you. But again, it goes back into what I was saying. You have to find it within yourself, the energy to become creators. And so I agree with you 100% on everything that you said, is that, invest in yourself. If the maker invests in you, and if nature invests in you, and the universe invests in you, why not invest in yourself?
Why not invest in yourself? This is almost a side comment, but I saw this little clip of an interview by Joe Rogan, the guy who has his own, podcast, everything. Joe Rogan makes a lot of money on his podcast, a lot of money, millions of dollars via his podcast. He was sharing on an interview recently that I saw. He said that, when I first started my podcast, he said I was doing the 3-hour interviews. He said my friends were saying, oh, no one's going to watch 3 hours. You got to shorten it. You got to do this. You got to do that. And he was like, nah, like this is what I want. This is what I want to do. Like, I'm going to do this. And he said, I did it. He said, it took me 5 years before the podcast made any money. He said, I did this because I loved it. I was passionate about it. And obviously he worked to get better and better and better at it. And ultimately the reward came. And so when you talk about time, it's understanding on one side, I'm going to put my time into something. And that means I'm not going to put my time into something else, because there is only so much time a day, right? So when you put your time into something, that means you are making a decision, whether you unconscious or consciously doing it, to not do something else, not invest your time in something else. And then second, time in regards to how long are you willing to pursue your goal, whatever it is that you say is important to you. How long are you willing to pursue it until something does break? And, for me, as I think through this podcast, like this is, whether I get paid or not, I love doing this. And the hope is one day, I'll have my 1000th episode, and I'll be, working on whatever that time's, that world's HBO or Netflix is. And I'll be doing this full time because I love engaging with leaders such as yourself, whether it be here in the podcast or speaking at events. But this is what I've been choosing to invest my time in.
No, the race is not for the swift. if you go back and look at a lot of the stories of a lot of the multi-billionaires, other than Rockefeller, but even John D. Rockefeller, the dad, right, the actual patriarch. I mean, the time that it took for him to build that empire for the next 4 generations, it wasn't overnight. Nothing happens overnight. It really, you hear the same Elon Musk, I want to throw that name out, but the failures, you go on and on again. I mean, there's a lot of if you're not failing, if because you will fail, you will definitely fail. But if you're not failing, then something's not right. It's not
Well,
right.
and I think then of Warren Buffett, right? Everyone knows how rich Warren Buffett is, but he didn't get to that sky space zone richness until what, 50s, 60s. Again, time. And I think it's really easy. Now this coming full circle in regards to social media. It's very easy to look around and say, "Oh my God, everyone else is doing so well. They're all succeeding right now when they're young, whatever they are, age are. And why am I not there too?" Two things. One, most of that stuff is BS. Most of the stuff you see
That's
on
what I was
social
gonna
media
say. A
is
lot of people ain't do too well. They just ain't telling you.
exactly. It's loans.
There's folks out
But
there like, help me.
exactly. And so like, they're faking the funk, and everyone's looking at them like, "Oh my God, why is my life not like this?" And so I think we have to. There's a book I'm going to read fairly soon. I can't remember. It's like the unwiring of something. I can't remember what it's called, but basically just how bad social media and our phones have corrupted our minds and what we believe is real and what's not real. So I said to say, like, whatever age you are, when you're listening to this, don't give up. Keep pushing, keep being creative, finding new ways to get it done. They say most businesses, like one out of 10 businesses fail. Like my business, GPS Leadership Solutions, has been around for now 11 and 12 years, somewhere around there. But even as I look back, I'm like, well, actually, it started as an organization that did primarily college events. Then it went to entry level and mid level employees. Then it went to it was just me speaking at events, and now it's me. I have a team of trainers and consultants, and we do consulting and training and workshops and like. So even though yes, it is the same name, it has went through so many uh, um, evolutions and adaptation through the years to remain sustainable and keep growing.
No, and I used a beautiful word, evolutions. I mean, because it's evolving, it's growing. And when you evolve, it shows the passion that you have. And it shows the strategic pivots that you made too. That in a way, I'm sure that it allowed for you to look within yourself to be more intentional and more strategic about what you want to do next. And those are the things I like to share with the audience too, because those are the things I've learned working at from Wall Street, from the New York Stock Exchange, from the Federal Reserve Bank of New York, to Grant Thornton, to now Jeanensis. Even with Jeanensis, we went through a lot of pivots. We started off, Alex, as a foreign direct investment advisory firm, winning businesses with JETRO, Japan Exchange Trade Organization, the Hong Kong Trade Development Council. Then we shifted into this digital asset space, this blockchain, this crypto space. And even within that, even within the crypto blockchain space, we said we're going to stay away from crypto and we're going to focus on technology. Yeah. So we've been spending more time with artificial intelligence, digital assets, blockchain, SaaS, and learning. And even now, I'm learning about healthcare and telehealth. The point I like to make is that you're constantly learning. You're constantly learning. You have to allow yourself to learn. And if you don't learn, you're never going to be able to move. And you're not going to grow. You're just going to be stagnant. And it's not in your nature to be stagnant because, again, it goes back, energy moves. Yeah. So if you're stagnant, that means that you got to ask yourself, how do I move? You got to keep moving. And that means learning. That means looking within yourself and exploring and asking those questions. So, and just being honest with yourself. Say, hey, I don't know. Let me learn something new. And you're doing that with your business. I've been doing that with my businesses. And that is the fun thing about life. But again, people may think, hey, he's got everything. He's got everything. But eventually he will. Financially, you're going to have, multi-billion-dollar opportunities. They will come because you're attracting that. They will come. It may not be now, but they will come.
One of my favorite quotes, it really is one of my favorite quotes right now. I'm always saying it, comes from Jordan Peterson. And basically he said he was making the point about, us needing to learn and grow as people. But he said most people don't want to do that because in order to learn and grow, we have to do exactly what you just said, which is we admit we don't know something. and people don't want to admit they don't know something. And so he says this quote. He says, "Don't let who you are today stop you from being who you can be tomorrow."
Wow.
Um,
Wow.
right? Like I
Wow.
love that quote. I'm like, yeah, like we all have the ability and the opportunity and to be something so much more grand than what we are today if we don't stop ourselves.
No, I agree with you. It's going back to not becoming your idols. Social media puts us in a position where we idolize ourselves.
Oh wow.
Right? Meaning that we
Wow.
literally spend more time, right, taking photos of ourselves,
Yeah.
trying to look great, right? So we idolize ourselves,
Yeah.
not understanding that that is not the true nature of our being, that everything is connected to us. So when you walk out, you're connected to the trees, you're connected to the sun, everything's connected to you. So there's a bigger picture than yourself. If you just have a picture of yourself, that's a boring picture. That really is a boring picture. But if you go out there, you throw a little bit of lake and a little boat and everything else, a little, family. I mean, it speaks more and it adds more value. It's the differentiating factor. It's something that I say to a lot of these companies as they build revenue, right? Companies love to build revenue and they get to a point where they're growing. Everyone's, I'm growing 30% EBITDA. I'm doing very well.
Yeah.
But there's a point where you peak out and you have to figure out what is going to differentiate you from your competitor.
Yeah. Yeah.
And the
Yeah.
one thing that differentiates people and firms is your creativity in creating more value. And it's never the same thing. It's never about you. And who said this actually? Steve Jobs. He said this. This is a story behind Steve Jobs. He constantly said, we got to make a better product.
Yeah.
We got to make it. We got to listen to our consumers. We got to listen to our customers. And he would always say that. And we got to be better. We got to improve it, make it better. And that's what's differentiating you from everybody else. So idolatry and arrogance destroy you.
Yeah.
So arrogant, to be arrogant, to think that you know everything. Come speak Japanese. Yo, you be humble. That was a humbling. I'm gonna share this. That was a humbling experience for me because I did well academically in college, but it was the one subject that I failed.
Yeah.
And I failed because I figured that was, I was going to use these traditional methods, going in and I was speaking French and Spanish, and I'm going to use that as a way to learn this language. It's like, no, you got to go in, you got to change your attitude, you got to change your approach, you got to act, you don't know, so you have to learn all over again. And that's the key right there. Babies do this very well. You observe a baby, they never sit back and say, I know how to walk. They fall, they get up, they try again, right? I mean, and it's like, I gotta learn how to walk. I got to learn how to eat. I don't know what happens to us when we get away from that. Society has really pushed us to the degree where it's all about ourselves all the time, every day. And sad to say, the more successful people, the more successful executives that I've run across, they don't think like that.
Yeah.
They don't think like, it's always the opposite. They're always thinking, okay, let me learn about you. Let me learn about the environment. It's usually the other way around. And that's how and it goes back to what you said, Alice, about listening, right? They're listening to everybody else.
Well, let's jump on this other topic because you talked about your son. I want to bring this now. You talked about kids again, and that is something that I am very, very aware of. Is that I have a 9-month-old little boy, as this recording, he's 9 months, and one thing I'm very aware of is that kids are extremely resilient. They're great. They're really great learners, and society teaches them to be less great at learning and almost to be less resilient, and like all these things that society teaches them that they're not good. And so I'm trying to think now, how do I make sure that I'm not inadvertently teaching him things that are not going to be helpful, that he's going to have to unlearn just so he can be successful moving forward as he becomes older. So I want to hear from you, like, what recommendations, what ideas do you have for raising a good human being? Because you have an NBA All-Star growing up in your household right now.
Well, I don't have any. It goes back to what I said mentioned before. I don't have any instructions. I would just say, you know what, our values are important. Who we are, who we value, what we learn over time from our parents, our loved ones are very, very important. Core values, caring, respect, honor, dignity, all the integrity. I mean, these are words, but being the example is even more important because kids, they watch you. They do pay attention to you. They watch you. 9 months is great. I mean, that's like, wow. I mean, that's who we are. I think what happens is we lose sight of those capabilities as we grow older. But it's in us. It's in us to, as a baby, to want to learn and hear and grow and be flexible and be open to everything else around them, the environment. But the values that you instill in your child last forever. I mean, there's things that, I look back to my son. I never thought that he would pay attention. He actually did. He listened to everything I said. I was like, my God, this kid really listened. I mean, and to the point now where he's doing it now. And it's because of the core values. He watched me get up early in the morning. He watched me read. We talk about wanting to have, kids to read more. It's enough to say it, but it's enough to do it. You have to be the example. When they see you're reading, they will begin to read too. It's small little things like that, hugging, being very generous and kind. Those small things, they pick up on it because they're sponges. And I think that's also in life in general. I think in general in life, how you interact with people is very, very critical. And you can apply that to business. You can apply that to clients. You can apply that to your professional lives. All those things, your value. Do never lose sight of your value. I wrote a book a long time ago called The Reference Point. And actually that book is being revitalized. There's some chapters that's adding to it, but The Reference Point has like a Pablo Coelho kind of feel to it, a little bit of the Alchemist feel. But this book brings back in light, what are your core values and how you made yourself? And it brings me back, and I was going backwards in terms of listening to old music. Yeah. Because I love my mom. She used to always bring out a little classical music like the Chuck Mancionis and good R&B songs and the quality. Not to say that music is not quality today, but there was some value in making music. Barry White, when people forget, Barry White was a great composer of music, not just the voice, but just music, instruments. And the value behind that, the ability to create that doesn't change. And so it brought me back into saying, okay, what is it that I care the most in my life? And how am I made as a person? Do I believe in love, and do I believe in dignity and integrity? Jeanensis, we believe in integrity. We when people look at us, they say these people, they are integrity people. Yeah. They're not going to BS. They're not going to sugarcoat things, and they're not going to go behind your back. And there's a respect level. And that is the most important thing. So to answer your question is your values and being an example for your child. And they would show you that. That's your legacy. Yeah, your child becomes your legacy. They'll bring that on to the next generation. Yeah. And then as you get older, you look back and you have a smile on your face.
Saying, oh, he listened to me.
He listened to me.
I have one last thought I want to run by you. I know we're starting to wrap up. One last thought to run by you, then I'm going to give you the floor. So we started this conversation before the recording started, and I stopped it. No, but I want to do this online. Okay, so we talked about how I was sharing how when I was in high school, again, football player, all area, all CIF, all these things. And again, I'm not saying everything was super easy for me, but I was pretty good at what I did. So that was high school. Went to college ball. And I was telling Ken, like, that first play, like that was fast. Everything was so much faster than what I was used to at the high school level. And these big guys, 300 plus pounds, moving. They are moving. And so eventually, after it took me a little bit, but I caught that speed. So I was moving as fast and I could work with these bigger guys. Then my full assumption is that you go to the NFL and it's even faster and even harder. And I guess the people who make it there have to elevate it to that level. You talked about your son and how he's playing ball. And these guys are huge. So my question is, my thought process right now is, in the sports world, I feel like every time you elevate to that next level, it gets faster and harder. And a number of people just can't keep up. That's why there's smaller and smaller number of people at those higher levels. In the work environment, in the professional world, do you see the same thing? Every time you move to the next level, is it that much harder? Is it that much faster? I question whether that's the case, or if it's just like, because I've always noticed people who get to those next levels, it's not because they're that much smarter or they're that much faster, is that they just do a little more than the next person. Like, they're a little more value, a little more extra time. So what are your thoughts?
Well, or they know how to work the system.
yeah, right.
That's really, the key is working the culture, is
Mm-hmm.
understanding the culture you in and working it for your favor. It's not like there are more intelligent. The most intelligent person may not be the CEO. In fact, you find that in most cases, your great CEOs would deflect and say that we are not the smartest people in the room. We just know how to bring the smartest people to help us. Right? And so you surround yourself with great minds and great doers in that environment. And I think understanding the system is very important.
Yeah.
And of course, working hard is very important too, but being prudent and wise, right? So if you are able to find the best way of working and finding a way to communicate and to build relationships in the best way, then you're able to move forward and move upwards. And that's just not in the corporate world, but that's also in life and business too. Finding the best way, attracting the right people to help you in your journey is even more important. So I used to think that way. I used to think the way that you got to sit there and you got to grind it out and work hard. But boy, I learned that lesson. There was folks that was moving ahead. I'm like, boy, that person's not as good as I am. But they took the time to listen and figure out the culture and found their way up faster because they were building relationships. So I think that's the most critical, more so in this day and age than anything else. I like to end with the sports analogy. Anthony Edwards, what is making this, and this kid is just amazing. What's making him very likable is the fact that his mental state, he embraces that moment. He embraces it. So yeah, it's difficult, but I'm going to do it.
Yeah.
I'm going to do it. And people around him are saying, okay, all right, now he's doing it. What are they going to say to you? They can't, if you tell somebody you're going to do something, it's either you try and you fail, right? And they can sit back and say, do you fail? But at least you try.
Yeah.
And you'd be amazed as to the amount of respect and the amount of movement you get out of that than to say that you did something and didn't even do anything. Yep. So to me, that is I would say is the most important is understanding the system and making that effort is the most important thing.
Absolutely. Again, could not agree more. I know we got to start wrapping up because you said I can see your phone buzzing. You got some presidents, some prime ministers buzzing you right now. Would you share any final thoughts, any ideas with the audience as we begin to wrap up?
Sure. I like to summarize actually. And it's not, it's amazing, Alex, it's not always in the business realm. I mean, people can always reach out to me via Jeanensis, also via the 144 Trailblazer Fund. We believe that the universe is not made of unicorns, but we all trailblazers. that we all have a story to tell. And one of the greatest things, Alex, that you mentioned in our discussion is the ability to listen, the ability to be true to yourself, the ability to tell your journey, to tell your story. I think that those are the most important elements: having values, sticking to your values. And as you progress in life and you meet people at a more senior level, that's really what they're looking for, because you're in that position already, because of your subject matter expertise. They would never hire you if they knew that you couldn't do the work. Now it's everything else. It's those soft skills that are very, very valuable in life. And that equates to financial energy, right? The ability to be creative, and then eventually you'll get the money coming in, because money is just financial energy. So you have to elevate yourself to a higher wavelength. And it may not be what you expect in terms of, he's going to talk about venture capitalists and private equity. Guess what? You know what? It works the same way in those industries. You'd be amazed. Mm-hmm. Those industries are people industries. Without the founders, there won't be a venture capital. There won't be a private equity. So it has to be in that same mode. So apply that over and over again in your life. Figure out what is it that you want to do on this planet with the time that's given to you, and be grateful. Always be grateful.
Ken, you're freaking amazing. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for coming on. Look, again, for the audience, really quickly, what's the key takeaway that you caught during today's episode? Put in the chat, come to comment, please. I'd love to hear from you, and we'll keep hitting on those points. You all know where I'm going with this. If you found any value from today's discussion, don't just look back. Don't say someone else should have been here. They could have been here. They could have benefited from this. Don't do that. Don't just look back. Reach back. Bring someone else to the table. And even more importantly, bring this to them. Bring the table to them. Click the like, click subscribe, share it with at least 2 of your friends, colleagues today. The way you engage, the more you engage in the content in this, allows more and more people get to see this and have their lives positively impacted as well. So please do click the like, subscribe, and share. As always, I encourage all of you, stay strong, stay positive, and definitely stay moving. See ya.
Thanks for listening to The Executive Appeal with Alex Tremble. I invite you to follow The Executive Appeal wherever you listen to podcasts. Follow me, your host, Alex Tremble, across all socials or via email for exclusive webinars, courses, and speaking engagements on continued topics of executive leadership. So until next time, stay strong, stay positive, and definitely stay moving.